become an expert in your craft. Really focus on the things that matter. Focus on the things that can help build your skill set to get you to the next level. It's great to want something, but what are you willing to sacrifice and give up to get it? Are you going to focus on the success of yourself or on building those individuals up to build them into super leaders? And I think that's the challenge for us. Great leaders create other leaders.
JC.
Rolling.
JC.
Hi.
We talk a lot about how important it is to find humility, be humble, be grateful. I'm sorry, I'm going to ask you to throw all that out today for this episode.
Okay.
Because what I want to know, what everyone's asking, is how you became president of Mark Taylor Residential. Your start, I mean, your humble beginnings going back to growing up in the Midwest. So are you okay if I kind of just pull you away and say, okay, your humility and just being...
Pry away, buddy.
Okay, we're ready. Well, first off, it's Frickin' Frack, also known as John Carlson and Adam Greco, Mark Taylor Residential Multifamily Forward. Thank you again for joining us. Another great episode. And this is all about JC, also known as the president of Mark Taylor, John Carlson. So, John, let's go back because there are very few, even though I've heard them just being in the industry for so long, there are very few that have followed the same path as you have. Right. Just even starting in the industry as a leasing consultant, but let's go there.
Okay.
How did you land at Mark Taylor coming from Minnesota?
Zero strategy. So I was 24 years old, dating a girl, and we were looking at living in a different state. And I think
Minnesota wasn't nice.
Well, I think life's a lot about epiphany and in terms of moments. And I had traveled a lot from age 21 to 24 with a small company called VTech, engineering semiconductor company. And I think my exposure to the world in traveling really allowed me to hone in on something that I knew I didn't want to do, and that was stay in Minnesota. Great state, family, friends, all of it. But I felt like there was another leg to my life and more opportunity ahead. So I had traveled a lot to Phoenix and New Mexico, Albuquerque, for my job. Like every other week I was in those or one of those two cities. So I circled Phoenix on the map with Megan. It was a physical map, and said, hey, let's go look at Phoenix because I love it. And she was reluctant, but I convinced her at least to commit to 2 days in early August of 2001. So great time to come to Phoenix, right?
Yeah, perfect timing.
180 degrees and humid. So we flew down. First priority was just to drive the city, but also look at potential living locations like many that come to the Valley. So I think we toured 15 communities. I'm not sure exactly how many Mark Taylor communities we toured during that time, but it was quite a few.
Did you even know Mark Taylor?
Had no idea what it was at all.
Yeah.
But we started to recognize the porte cocheres and the beautiful landscaping, amenity space, all of those things. So I think we probably toured 6 or 7. And second day flight was scheduled at roughly 9:30 at night. We were late in our tours. Last community was San Cervantes. Again, not knowing anything about Mark Taylor. It was like 6:30, so we joked like we're breaking into Mark Taylor or San Cervantes, and so skidded around the amenity space area. Someone let us in with a fob to the pool area. It was I'd say almost like a removal of breath. Like it was amazing to me. Like I had grown up in a very blue collar type background. Had a duplex that was underwhelming at best. I'll describe it that way in Mankato, Minnesota at the time. So seeing a sand beach pool, water features, music playing on the rock speakers, people having a great time, and it was still under construction. There were only a handful of residential buildings open.
Yeah.
So we really got a taste for a brand new community by Mark Taylor. Although again, we didn't know it was San Cervantes. We didn't know anything about Mark Taylor. So we flew back that night ultra excited and got back to Minnesota. Called the manager the next morning, who happens to be Michelle Sinclair at the time, still dear friends today, and just said, hey, what's it going to take to move in? Went through the pricing, concessions, et cetera, and filled out the application, and we were excited to move. So we packed up our U-Hauls and moved a few weeks later, and Megan had secured a role in her position, and I was scheduled to fly back to Chicago on 9/13/2001. Obviously an important date, 2 days after 9/11. No flights that day.
Yeah.
The company that was set to hire me was set to open a satellite facility in Chandler, Arizona, put a hiring freeze on, and the engineering world kind of cratered. I was on the electrical side, and I actively upon moving in, started sending my resume out for about 3 months by fax at the time, and got to know the staff, which was amazing. Colleen, Bernie, Michelle, Susan, etc. And Ricky
Because you were
Ross
going in there to use the fax? Okay.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
it was like a daily routine for me.
Yeah.
3 months in-ish, Michelle came to me and just said, "Hey, I know you're looking for a role in your career from an engineering perspective, but we have a part-time leasing position open. Would you consider it?" And in my fixed mindset at the time, without much humility, pounding my chest, I'm like, "Absolutely not. I'm an engineer. Like, why would I do that?"
Yeah.
Week later, came to my senses, got to pay bills, talked to some family and friends, and like, just try it out. So I committed to a year, started part-time leasing, and absolutely loved it. I loved the energy. I loved the team. I loved where I lived. Sales comes easy to me in terms of communication. And about 6 months later, I got a call from a firm in Chandler, and they said, "Hey, I still have your resume on file. Would you consider coming in and interviewing?" And I thought about it for a millisecond and said, "No, I'm going to play this real estate thing out." And 22 years later, here I am.
Were you still part-time at that point when you got that phone call?
I think I was full-time.
You were full-time at that?
Transition. Yeah. I was picking up extra hours. Yeah.
Right. Do you remember what the multifamily industry was like in the early 2000s? Comparative to, because we're talking centralization.
I think, I was just trying to figure out life. I was 25. I was trying to understand, what I was doing.
Yeah.
A transition from, a space I really knew well, even though I was young. I felt like I was really trying to figure out life, figure out my relationship, figure out a new city.
Right.
I came from a small town of 600 people. So imagine moving to Phoenix at the time, 3.5, 4 million people, and just trying to figure it out. And luckily, Michael Wilson was my neighbor.
Unbelievable. Unbelievable. So Chandler, even now, Chandler is, Southeast Valley, right? Chandler had a different identity back then. Mm-hmm. Just the vision of actually building a property like San Cervantes in South Chandler, and you land there with Michael Wilson, our VP of Asset Management, and happen to be your neighbor. Mm-hmm. Talk about this, the stars just aligning in the right direction. Did you guys have any conversations, you and Michael, at all early in your career?
We had a lot of conversations prior to starting with Mark Taylor, because Michael's roommate had worked with Mark Taylor. So they were receiving an employee discount, and Michael was an out-of-work finance guy. I was an out-of-work engineer. And so we spent a lot of time at the pool trying to understand, what life was going to be for us, and similar in age. So once we both started, he started just before me. I felt like there was some momentum there. Both him and Chad, his roommate, loved Mark Taylor.
Yeah.
Loved the people. It was a pretty small company at that time, but it had great people.
Yeah.
And I think when I look back, the introduction to Mark Taylor, San Cervantes, Michelle and her team, Chad collectively, Dale at the time as president, I just felt like it was a tremendous opportunity to connect to people and really create roots for myself. So what I often talk about in new hire today, I meet with new hire groups every Monday. And I do that for a couple reasons. One, I want them to know where we're going and why.
Sure.
Two, I really want to share my experience in terms of how I connect it to Mark Taylor.
Yeah.
It became, the roots of my life in Phoenix. Megan went back to Minnesota a year or two later. So it was really me. I was the trailblazer. I was by myself. I didn't have other family or friends here from Minnesota.
Right.
So Mark Taylor became that connection hub, if you will, for my life. And I always believed strongly, if I ever grew into a role within Mark Taylor, that I could actually make a difference or provide a similar or really a better opportunity for new employees to connect to an organization with purpose, I would do so. And since becoming president in 2016, I've focused a lot on that. And I just think, I think back to that, and I'm just so grateful that I had the opportunity to connect to the family of Mark Taylor in Phoenix and Arizona through the lens of that relationship, meaning San Cervantes and growing into this. So extremely grateful.
Talking about being president, of course, the type of leadership you have now, you weren't an individual contributor because you were still part of a team when you were a leasing agent, of course, right? The leadership role now, completely different. Can you talk about how that transition for you came to life, or when it's, when you finally were able to grasp it, understand it, and really put together what you saw as your vision for leadership for the entire company?
I think it's accelerated over the last 5 years specifically because I've spent a lot of time and effort on pushing myself to grow in that arena. But I think, if you go back to 2002, 2004, I became an asset manager, 2008, vice president, 2016 president. There was a lot of opportunistic learning environments. What I mean by that is you had the great financial crisis. We sold our DLF portfolio in June of 2006. It took our portfolio substantially down, both in terms of revenue and size. It was the only time I can recall in the history of the organization where we had to let some people go, and it was 24 people. And I was part of that process. And
still remember the number.
And it was a difficult time for me, and I didn't know if that meant I had to pivot again, if Mark Taylor was for me long term, if real estate made sense for me, and of course because of the GFC and the financial, all of the things that were happening financially, I was of course concerned. But what a learning opportunity for myself and others to really move through that time period and grow back into what I call a really remarkable business or sector cycle for multifamily post GFC. And the learnings from those doldrums or downtimes really helped us, grow as an organization. So, I think the pathway of success is always about learning from your mistakes and growing. Humility is a big piece of that. Being aware of your weaknesses and putting the arrow on yourself and saying, okay, how can I get better? Taking that responsibility, taking extreme ownership, as we like to call it. So, I think I've always been open to that. And I really moved, honestly, from a fixed mindset when I was an engineer, 2002, 3, 4, and really, I've transformed into having a very open growth type mindset.
Sure.
And, that's through the power of, learning, podcasting, books, mentors, all of those things. And I'm an ever learner, and I feel like I can't get enough information every week. Like I want to absorb as much as possible. And I think for those that want to be great leaders, I've been surrounded by many, and I pay a lot of attention to great leaders. And I think today, my focus a lot is on how do I build a team that creates more bona fide and accelerated leadership, meaning if you have a team of 5, are you going to focus on the success of yourself or on building those individuals up to build them into super leaders? And I think that's the challenge for us. Great leaders create other leaders. And I think, today we have some tremendous leaders within the organization. We have a lot of A players, a lot of talent. And I think we're focused on the right things. It's still hard. But, today I'm really grateful that I'm surrounded by those folks. And I think if you're an everlong learner and you're willing to accept the responsibility of failing, and what I mean by that is you fail, you learn from it, you move forward, you take responsibility. You're not pointing fingers, you're not blaming, you're not creating the victim mentality. You're accepting those challenges and pushing yourself forward.
Hard to do.
That's what matters. And I live by the mantra of be better than yesterday. It sounds simple, but as many of us know, when you look back in your younger years, specifically for me, I did a lot of comparisons like, why am I not that person? Why don't I have those things? Why am I
remember those days.
I not in that role, right?
Yeah.
And I think a lot about, I think there's a quote, and I don't know who said it, and I'm paraphrasing a bit, but comparison of others is the way to really remove joy from yourself. And when I compare myself to yesterday, that's a positive thing because I'm pushing myself forward. It doesn't mean I'm perfect. Doesn't mean it's where I want to be. And you can steal the Matthew McConaughey hero speech. His hero is himself in 5 years. All that means is that you're aspiring to be something better for yourself, for your family, for your organization, for your loved ones. And that's where I find myself today.
You're making my job easy right now because I had all these questions and you already answered them. Yeah, you did a great job. Let's talk about we have a lot of our viewers, of course, within the multifamily industry, young leaders, very driven, very data, they want to consume as much data as they possibly can. So going from on-site, property manager, leasing, assistant manager, I didn't put those in order, unfortunately, and then coming to corporate, like the executive level. You talked about being an ever learner. What if you could point out one, maybe two things to share with everyone? What is like one of the most important, two of the most important things that they should be focused on going from a leader of a on-site team, very, very important, very, very difficult to move into corporate and have, follow me on this?
Sure.
Yeah.
I mean, there's many things you can focus on a few, and I will. So when you think about being, and we talk a lot about specialization today, being specialized in your role.
Yeah.
It's becoming an expert in your specific role or job, and then field. So I attempted to master leasing, whatever that means, but I put my best foot forward and engaged. Really, I put the pedal down to understand, okay, what does leasing mean? Translate that into what does the administrative side of the business mean? What does the service side of the business mean? Because you have to understand both sides of the business from an on-site perspective to really build the foundational set for how you're going to really be a great employee in that manner. And then as you start to grow, assistant manager, really starting to understand the business. Like what is the business about? What does it mean to be financially successful or otherwise? What does it mean to maintain an asset with the highest level of maintenance, service, 5-star, as we talk about today? And then you start to feed in what are market conditions? What's real estate really mean in the multifamily sector? How do the other sectors play into that? What is the macroeconomic input? How does that affect multifamily? How does it affect the local businesses, your state, the country, et cetera? And then understanding and I think this was a big piece for me. I always push myself to connect, and there's always forks in the road in your life. I really pushed myself down the tougher paths with third-party ownership groups. I remember working with Laney Miller, my first third-party client, UBS. I was an on-site manager, and everyone said, go the other direction, right? Go to a Mark Taylor-owned asset. It's easier. I said, but what about over here? What can I learn from Laney Miller, who had 7 or 8 management companies at the time, 25 or 26 assets? And I remember having a conversation with her to start. I said, I want to be the best manager in your portfolio. And she chuckled. She's like, cute, like, yeah, good one.
Sure.
But I'll help you try to get to that level. And I learned so much from Laney in just 2 years because she was willing to support me as almost a mini mentor, and really helped grow my real estate skill set. And I think that continued. And I think the great thing about our business being 85% third party, you get exposed to some great real estate people, right?
Yeah.
You go JP Morgan, MetLife, High Street, Trammell Crow,
and the list
Goldman
keeps
Sachs,
going.
Ownership groups that are, family owned because, they started in a similar fashion. The Lombrosos, starting back in Mexico and building their portfolio and just really understanding all of these dynamic stories and pathways to success. And everyone has different philosophies. And I feel like I was able to take the best of all of those things and incorporate that into my life, into understanding the business and really pushing myself in this sector. So I think being an ever learner matters. The second piece I'll add is that, relationships are so important in every sector, I think, but more so in multifamily is what I've learned. And going to national conferences, just how personal these are, how closely people are. I mean, people understand, what your business is, even if, we're in 2 states. I can go to a conference in DC and like, oh, Mark Taylor, luxury apartments and multifamily in Phoenix, Arizona. You guys have a great reputation, and then you build into this dynamic relationship pool of people just saying, guys I've known for 20 plus years.
Yeah.
And I think a piece of that is just, understanding that you can always learn from the person sitting across from you. I think it's Jordan Peterson's Rule 7 and the 12 Rules of Life, maybe Rule 8. I can't remember exactly, but I've always been very open to asking questions, being curious, pushing the envelope on those sides. So just understanding, from a vendor specific philosophy, like, why are you guys doing this? How do you succeed in your business? And I think that's that's done well for me. And I think in doing so, when you create great relationships, it's almost the opposite of burning bridges. You never step on somebody on your way in terms of you growing or moving into different roles within an organization or your career. And I can look back and confidently say, I don't believe I have too many enemies because I've always treated people with respect. And I think that's a big piece of it, understanding that everyone's trying to carve out a piece of life and be successful and support their family and their growth. So, that's been my philosophy.
I love it. And never burning a bridge. That's been one of mine for a long time. This industry can be transient at some point. We do have long, like yourselves, 20 plus years. We go back to like Ken McElroy, 30 years. Excuse me. Just very, very important. I love that. Let's talk about the progression of your career again, going back to the early 2000s to now, 2024. How the industry has changed. Mm-hmm. We touched on it a little bit in the beginning, but what do you see as the major changing point, turning point?
Well, quick snapshot. When I was part-time leasing, I was typing leases on a typewriter. I was filling out work orders on carbon paper. We were moving people out only on the last day of the month. It was very manual in terms of processes. It was a bit archaic in terms of how we were participating with the technology of the day.
Crazy to say that was early 2000s. That was archaic at that point.
It was.
Yeah,
it was. So fast forward to today, it's 180 degrees different. I think some things remain true. It's about fundamentals. It's still about people. But I think the industry has now been exposed to a great deal of money across the globe, meaning multifamily sector is sought after more so today than ever, in my opinion. Actually, that's fact. If you look at the investments, the capital stacks over the last 3 to 4 years versus office, retail, industrial, even though industrial's exploded here. So, when I think about where multifamilies come just in the last 5 years, it's been substantial. And I think the pandemic in 2020, there's a lot of negatives around that, but the positive is that it really accelerated our willingness to expose ourselves to new technologies. And it really got our sector closer, I think, to current timeframes.
Yeah.
As it relates to technology and the things that we can introduce to support our industry. So, thank God for the pandemic from that perspective.
Do you remember I can't remember who it was, who we had a special guest with us. We were mentioning Otis Spunkmeyer cookies.
We had those. I could smell them right now.
The oven, like the little toaster
cookies,
oven.
yes.
I remember when I was a leasing agent, when I first got into the industry, I learned on my second or third day, I learned how to blow up helium balloons and tie them into an arch to go from one side of the monument sign to the other side. Right?
Again, that was marketing. Was important. What was the size of the balloons?
Unbelievable. Oh yeah, everything had to be exactly the same size. I was so proud of myself that I could be a clown if I wanted to.
I've probably eaten 3,000 to 4,000
cookie dough
cookies,
not even fully cooked. Not fully cooked. Yeah. So in terms of career opportunities, what do you think is in store for this industry, for people that are currently just beginning in this industry or are thinking about it, graduating college, even going to a trade school, whatever that may be, as far as how they find their path here?
As always, luck's involved in everything in life.
Yeah.
It's a percentage.
Yeah.
Who knows what level? I don't think that's anecdotal. I think it's fact. Luck is a part of it. But if you can tie yourself to great people. I've seen other folks tie themselves to people that aren't so great or maybe not so knowledgeable, and their pathways, sputter out or go a different direction, or they bounce out of the sector. But I think if you can align yourself with a great company, there's other great companies. It's not just Mark Taylor.
Yeah.
Find great mentors. Really focus on the work and the effort to build your skill set, to become a true expert in real estate. That matters. And it takes time. It takes effort. Over time, you start to work yourself through different cycles. So it's not that you have a crystal ball, but you can say, oh, I've seen this before. I pretty much know what's going to happen. There's going to be variations, but tried and true, these things happen in a cyclical nature over and over again. But back to the specialization, if you can really learn your craft, push yourself, be open to networking, push yourself to really growing yourself, and just pushing yourself to be better than yesterday, there's a lot of opportunity in the space.
So you're talking about learning your craft. Times are a little bit different as far as the newer generation. I'm not generalizing. Please don't take it, misconstrue this comment or question at all. Longevity definitely has changed. I remember it was essential to earn your stripes. You had to get beat up. You had to be able to learn from ground up to make sure that you kept on progressing and moving forward. With as many opportunities as there are today, especially with how many units are being developed here, specifically in Phoenix, right? How important is it to really make sure that you are not jumping from one management company, development company, whatever it may be, to another, even though maybe there are so many different opportunities? Is it more important to really understand what you need to hone in on that specific craft that you love and want to be better at with one specific company for a while? Or is it okay to kind of get your feet wet, put your toes in the water from company to company?
I think it really depends on what your strategy and goals are for your personal and professional life.
Love that.
I know folks that, job hop for titles. Sometimes titles are important to certain folks.
Sure.
Money, fame, limelight, immediate gratification. I think it's really important, and I'll paraphrase, it's Nick Saban's quote, but it's great to want something, but what are you willing to sacrifice and give up to get it, right? And I talk a lot about persistence in a continued fashion. Nick Saban talks about it. Simon Sinek talks about it. It's the power of work ethic. So if you think about, if I go to the gym tomorrow and I work out for 3 hours, and I go out at night with my family, am I going to look any different or really I'm going to feel tired and sore? But it's the persistence and the consistency of that. If I go to the gym,
that's what makes
5 days a week for the next 2 years, I guarantee you I'm going to look different, feel different, be more healthy in those 2 years. But you have to get past the immediate gratification. So are you willing to stick it out in a role to really maximize what you can learn in that position and then move on to the next step? I'm not saying turn down opportunities, but become an expert in your craft. Really focus on the things that matter. Focus on the things that can help build your skill set to get you to the next level, because there's no shortcuts. I know folks that have been promoted too fast, that title chase, and all of a sudden you're regional and you still don't know how to underwrite a deal. You don't really understand the cycles, the timing, how to really negotiate conversations, difficult ones with clients. It's not difficult in 2019, 18, 17, 2022, 2021 in terms of operations.
Sure.
You're raising rents again. NOI's up. Life's pretty good, but that doesn't last forever. And here we are today in a very difficult environment. It's going to be more difficult in 2025. How do you navigate that? How do you have those intelligent conversations? How do you understand expense control? How do you maximize revenue? How do you build a team that can really hold themselves steady through this I'll say tumultuous time from an operations perspective? All of those things matter. So be an expert, learn your craft.
You've always been open in sharing your experiences, sharing just everything that you can, especially about being a leader. So thank you again. We really appreciate that. We go back, we talked about there's very few that have followed a similar or like path that you have. I think of Leslie Bryce, I think of John Riles, I think Ken McElroy, of course, and then of course you. I just congratulations and keep doing it, because I want to keep working for you.
With me.
I want to keep working with you.
And I appreciate you, your story coming from, yes, you were on site, but you moved to the vendor world. You did a tremendous job in growing your business with Burns at the time. And I was always excited to potentially work with you. And it's just great to have you on the team in a leadership capacity, helping build young leaders today. You have some dynamic folks on your team.
Great. Yeah, they're great.
And I just look forward to working with you for a long time.
Appreciate it, brother. Yeah. We'll keep our stories of when we first met, we'll keep those for off screen. Is that all right?
Yeah, of course.
Probably
happy
a better
hour at Kona
idea.
Grill.
Yeah. Oh, wow. I remember that one. All right. We'll leave that one alone. So I'm going to have you put the humility and the grateful cap back on. Let's continue our tradition.
Okay.
What do you think? What are you grateful for today?
I'm grateful for everyone that took a chance on me. I'm grateful for everyone that gave me time. And I always think about, today I can walk into, let's just say it's a dinner meeting at the AMA, for an example, or a conference, and people will give me time either because of the relationships that I've created or that we've created together. There's a trust factor, and or it could be just because I'm president. And I'll go back to the time frames when I wasn't. Go back to brainstorming 2003. I was a manager, and there were some really smart, prosperous, successful people that gave me time, and they didn't have to.
Yeah.
And I just think you got to give back a little bit. Tucker Carlson talks about how him and his wife just want to help, like it's inside their wedding rings. They just want to help a little bit, right? You can't change the entire world, but you can give back a little bit every day.
Yeah.
And I'm always going to take extra time to meet with someone who wants to talk about their future. I love seeing someone grow from here to here.
Yeah.
Right. And that gives me a lot of gratitude, because I'm grateful that they've focused on themselves and taken that chance on themselves to build up and grow. And when someone's feeling good about themselves because they put in the work, they've done the right things, they've mentored, they've been mentees, they've grown, they've accelerated their learning curves. I love that. So I want to see more of that as our organization grows. I want to see more leaders sprout. I want to see more growth. I just love seeing young leaders develop.
I'm going to use, you mentioned relationships, how important relationships are. I'm really grateful for the relationships I've been able to build over the years, especially moving here from Chicago. Again, Midwest folk, right? Midwest guy, just like you. Moved here in 99. Started right as a leasing agent right out the gate, was getting my real estate license, and just, went on from there. But still being able to have those conversations from my early career. I just spoke to Corky Northrup. I mean, how big of a turn is that? He used to be my client, and now I'm talking to him about a development deal. I mean, just unbelievable. I love that. I'm very, very grateful for my relationships. You being one of them, of course.
Same with you, buddy.
All right. Well, John Carlson, Adam Greco, once again, Multifamily Forward, Mark Taylor Residential. Thank you.